Were the disciples duped? I think that's a great question. Were the disciples just people who, saw a few magic tricks and then believed everything that Jesus did and everything that Jesus taught? Or were they people who really looked at the evidence and were sure that Jesus was sent from God? It's important because a lot of what we believe about Jesus depends on the testimony of those who saw his life. And I know that there are people who tend to be on varying ends of the spectrum. Some people tend to they hear something and they're like, oh yeah, I believe that. And other people are, they're more skeptical and they're like, I'm not sure. I want to see it myself. And I want to examine it. I want to hear both sides of the issue. And so it's important to think about which side of that spectrum the disciples were on. I know when I was a kid, there were a lot of, we would call them urban legends now, and you didn't really know what was true or not because you didn't have the internet or any way to check to see if something was true. And of course, even now with the internet, it's hard, but there would just be things like, well, if you threw a penny off the Empire State Building, it hit somebody in the head, it would kill them. And you didn't really have any way to know if that was true or to check that out. But there were also kind of spiritual things that would happen. You would hear about, oh, there's a statue in South America that every once in a while it would just weep tears and oh, it's this miraculous thing. And many people, maybe on this side of the spectrum, just flock to that, and they believe it's some spiritual sign from God. And other people are more like, I really want to see it myself, or I want to see hard evidence. And so, which side were the disciples on? Well, I tend to be maybe a little more on the skeptical side. I know my mom always used to say, don't believe everything you hear, and I've always appreciated that. And I think I tend to be that way. And I think the disciples were also that way, and the other followers of Jesus. They didn't believe him right off. They struggled with belief all the way through his ministry. And in John 6, Jesus said, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. Whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. As I told you, you have seen me and you still do not believe. And just a little bit after this, Jesus is talking. He's saying some pretty hard things, and many people leave him. Many of his followers just walk away. And he turns to the disciples. He's like, what about you guys? Are you going to leave too? And Peter said, Lord, to where would we turn? You have the words of eternal life. And I always just take that to mean a little like, I don't know, you're saying some tough things. We'd like to leave, but we know that you're the real deal. But many people were examining him and saying, we're not sure. We're not sure. So I just want to point out that they're not gullible. It's not like they would just believe anything. And it's interesting to think about. This is his third year of ministry. He has already turned water into wine. He's healed people. He's cast out demons. He has brought people back to life. The widow's son who died near the city of Nain, and Lazarus. And he's just done the feeding of the thousands. And so he's done all these different miracles. And yet people were still skeptical. So these are not like super gullible people. These are people who really want evidence. And Thomas, of course, wasn't there when Jesus first appeared to the other disciples. And they said, we've seen Jesus, he's alive. And he's like, I don't know about that. I want proof. And so, of course, Jesus appeared to him after that and gave him the proof. He said, Thomas, put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. And then Jesus said to him, because you've seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. And I think it's important that each of us comes to a decision point like Thomas was at. Thankfully, he had enough evidence that he's like, okay, I believe. I would encourage you, don't run away from those questions. Don't run away from the evidence. I would think about it. What about the testimony of the disciples? What about the historical evidence that we have for Jesus? What about Jesus? If he wasn't the Son of God, who was he? And look at the archaeological evidence and the fulfilled prophecies. And I think even to look at your own heart, I think people know in their heart that there's a creator, that there's a judge, that we're more than the natural, that there's something special about us. I think those are things we know instinctively. Look at all that and then weigh the evidence and make a decision to follow Jesus. Like Jesus said to Thomas, stop doubting and believe. Or like he said in John 6, he said, he's the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. He's inviting people into a relationship with him. And I want to encourage you, stop doubting and believe. Take that step, put your faith in him, and enter into a new life with Jesus Christ.